I'm Jessie, 28 female, and my family has started to see me as little more than a walking, talking ATM. That isn't a conclusion I came to overnight. It wasn't the result of a single, dramatic argument or a sudden revelation. It was a slow creep, a gradual erosion of my identity from daughter and sister to financial provider. It happened over hundreds of small moments, thousands of tiny transactions, until the person they saw was no longer me, but a convenient solution to their problems. My mother, Carol, is a woman who believes family helps family, but her definition of help had become incredibly one-sided. At 59 and retired, she spent her days managing the household she and my brother, Tom, lived in, the very house I grew up in and now helped maintain. My brother, Tom, is 32. He drifts through life on a cloud of unfulfilled potential and what he calls bad luck. He works odd jobs here and there, a handyman one week, a delivery driver the next, but nothing ever sticks. According to him, the world is always conspiring against his big break. According to me, his big break looks a lot like my bi-weekly paycheck. The dynamic wasn't always like this. Growing up, Tom was my hero. He was the older brother who taught me how to ride a bike and stood up to bullies for me. My mom was the one who packed my favorite lunches and read me bedtime stories. We were a family, a unit built on love and shared experience. But something shifted when my father passed away 10 years ago. And it shifted again when I graduated from college with a degree in computer science and landed a great job as a software engineer. My success, which should have been a point of pride for them, slowly became an expectation. It started innocently enough. "Jessie, honey, the cable bill is a little high this month. Could you spot me 100?" my mom would ask. Of course, I would. Then it was Tom. "Hey, Jess, I'm a bit short on gas to get to this job interview. Can you help me out?" Gladly. I wanted to help. It felt good to be in a position to ease their burdens. I was contributing, being a good daughter and a supportive sister. But the requests never stopped. They only grew. The first real crack in my cheerful provider facade appeared about 2 years ago. Tom came to me with a grand idea for a custom t-shirt printing business. He had designs, a business plan that looked suspiciously like a list of things he wanted to buy, and a fire in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. He needed $5,000 for the equipment. "This is it, Jess," he'd said, his voice brimming with excitement. "This is the one that gets me on my feet. You won't have to worry about me anymore." I was hesitant. It was a lot of money. But my mom sat next to him, nodding encouragingly. "Give him a chance, sweetheart," she'd urged. "He just needs a little push. It's an investment in your brother's future, in the family's future." So I did it. I transferred the money, feeling a mix of hope and anxiety. For 2 weeks, I heard nothing but buzzing energy from Tom. He was meeting suppliers and scouting locations. Then, silence. I called, but he was always busy. A month later, I saw a picture on a mutual friend's social media page. It was a photo from a week-long music festival 2 states away. There, in the middle of a laughing group, was Tom, wearing a brand-new festival wristband and a grin from ear to ear. There was no t-shirt equipment, no business. Just my $5,000 funding his vacation. When I confronted him, he was defensive. I needed to clear my head to get the creative juices flowing, he'd insisted. "You can't put a price on inspiration, Jessie." I was furious. I went to my mom, expecting her to be equally appalled. Instead, she put a placating hand on my arm. "He's just figuring things out, honey," she'd said softly. "He's young, you're stable. You can afford to help him find his way." He was 30 at the time. I was the younger one, yet I was the one expected to be endlessly mature, endlessly stable, endlessly giving. The money was never mentioned again. It wasn't a loan, it was my contribution to his journey. The second major crack came last Christmas. I had been saving up, and as a big gift to the family, I bought a beautiful, brand-new sectional sofa for the living room. The old one was sagging, its springs groaning in protest every time someone sat down. I was so excited for them to see it. I imagined movie nights, all of us comfortably settled in. The delivery men set it up, and I waited for my mom and Tom to get home. When they walked in, my mom stopped dead in the entryway. She stared at the plush, charcoal gray sofa. I waited for the happy gasp, the hug. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "Gray? I was never a fan of gray. It's such a sad color." Tom flopped down on it, kicking his feet up. "It's comfy, I guess," he'd shrugged. But was this really necessary? My mom had walked over, running a hand over the fabric. "You know, Jessie," she'd said, her voice laced with that familiar tone of gentle disappointment. "This is a lovely gesture, but we could have really used the money for the property tax bill instead. A couch is nice, but it doesn't keep a roof over our heads." I just stood there speechless. I was already paying for the streaming services, Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, all bundled under my name. I was already paying for the shared family gas card that Tom used far more than my mom. I was already covering the weekly grocery deliveries from the local market, a bill that had mysteriously grown larger and larger over the past year. I had thought the couch was something for them, a luxury, a sign of love. To them, it was a miscalculation. I had spent the money on the wrong thing. They didn't want my gifts, they just wanted the cash, no strings attached. From then on, I started to notice everything. How no one said thank you when the groceries arrived. How Tom would complain if the Netflix subscription had a temporary glitch, as if it were a utility I was failing to provide. How my mom would leave passive-aggressive notes on the fridge. "We're out of milk." A note not for the person who drank the last of it, but for me, the person who was expected to magically replenish it from my apartment across town. My presence at family gatherings became transactional. If I showed up, I was expected to bring the most expensive dish, or pay for the pizza order, or leave a generous gift for my mom. My accomplishments at work, the long hours I put in to earn my salary, were never discussed. They were just the silent engine that funded their lives. My personality, my hopes, my struggles, all of it had become invisible. I was a daughter in name only. In practice, I was just the wallet. And I was getting tired of being so easy to open. The invitation to the annual family 4th of July pool party came via a group text from my mom. It was full of bubbly emojis and exclamation points, a stark contrast to the sinking feeling in my stomach. These events had become showcases for my family's unique brand of casual cruelty. They were held in the backyard of my childhood home, a space that now felt less like a sanctuary and more like a stage for my public humiliation. For days, I debated not going. I could say I was sick. I could say I had to work. The excuses felt flimsy even in my own head, and I knew the guilt trip from my mom would be immense. "But Jessie, it's for the family. Everyone is expecting you." Her voice would be thick with disappointment, and despite everything, a part of me still hated letting her down. A foolish, hopeful part of me thought that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Maybe they'd finally see me. So I decided to go. On the morning of the party, I stopped at a gourmet market. I spent over $100 on artisanal cheeses, fancy crackers, and marinated olives, the kind of things my mom loved but would never buy for herself. I also picked up a case of imported beer for Tom and the other guys. A peace offering, perhaps. A desperate attempt to say, "Look, I'm contributing. I'm part of this. Appreciate me." When I arrived, the party was in full swing. The backyard was filled with the smell of chlorine and sunscreen. A few aunts, uncles, and cousins were scattered in lawn chairs, and Tom was holding court by the pool with a couple of his friends. My mom was bustling around the patio, directing traffic. I walked in, holding my bags of expensive groceries. "Hey, everyone," I said, a little too brightly. A few people mumbled hellos. My mom kissed the air next to my cheek. "Oh, good you're here," she said, her eyes immediately going to the bags. "Put those on the table, will you, honey? People are getting hungry." There was no thank you, no comment on the quality of what I'd brought. I was just another delivery service. I dutifully arranged the cheese and crackers on a platter, feeling a familiar wave of invisibility wash over me. I tried to mingle, but the conversations felt strained. My cousins talked about their kids, their jobs, their summer plans. When I tried to talk about a challenging project at work, their eyes glazed over. Tom's friend asked me what I did, and when I said software engineer, he just nodded and said, "Oh, right, the computer stuff." Then he turned back to Tom to talk about a football game. I retreated to a lounge chair at the edge of the patio, pulling out my phone as a shield. I watched as Tom's friends cracked open the imported beers I'd brought, slapping him on the back. I watched as my aunts devoured the cheese platter without a single comment about where it came from. I was just a ghost who stalked the fridge. After about an hour of this, I decided I should at least try to enjoy the pool. I had worn my favorite swimsuit, and the sun was hot on my skin. I slipped off my cover-up and walked towards the steps of the pool. As my feet touched the warm concrete, Tom's voice cut through air, loud and clear for everyone to hear. "Well, look who finally showed up, the wallet in flip-flops." He grinned and his friends snickered. A hot, prickly shame crawled up my neck. My cheeks burned. Every head turned to me. I was no longer invisible. I was the center of attention, the butt of the joke. I could feel their eyes on me, some curious, some pitying, some amused. The nickname wasn't just insulting. It was a public declaration of my entire value to them, summed up in 4 crass words. I froze, my hand on the pool railing, unsure of what to do. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I looked to my mom, my heart pounding, a desperate, childish plea in my eyes. I needed her to defend me. I needed her to be my mother. She was standing by the grill, spatula in hand. She met my gaze, not with anger at Tom, but with mild annoyance at me. She sighed, a puff of weary air, and said, "Jessie, don't just stand there. At least be useful and grill the burgers. Your brother is entertaining his guests." That was it. That was the moment the final crack shattered into a million pieces. It wasn't just Tom's cruel joke anymore. It was my mother's endorsement of it. Be useful, not stand up for yourself. Not Tom, that was a horrible thing to say. Just a simple, devastating command that affirmed everything I feared. My usefulness was my only worth. My feelings didn't matter. My presence was only tolerated if I was serving a function, grilling, paying, providing. A strange, chilling calm settled over me. The burning shame was replaced by a cold, hard clarity. This was never going to change. They were never going to see me. They were never going to value me for who I was. The hope I'd been clinging to for years finally died, right there on the hot concrete beside the shimmering blue water. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I looked at my brother, who was still smirking. I looked at my mother, who had already turned back to the grill as if nothing had happened. And I smiled, a small, tight, genuine smile. "You know what?" I said, my voice quiet but steady. "I think I will do something useful." I turned around, picked up my towel and my cover-up, and walked back through the house. I didn't look back. I could feel their confused stares on my back, but I didn't care. As I walked out the front door and got into my car, I knew exactly what kind of useful thing I was going to do. It wasn't for them. It was for me. The drive back to my apartment was a blur of sun-drenched streets and familiar landmarks that I barely registered. The windows were down, but the hot summer air did nothing to thaw the icy resolve that had formed in my chest. For the first time, the endless loop of hurt and justification in my mind went silent. There were no more questions, no more what-ifs, no more self-doubt. There was only the quiet, humming certainty of a decision that had been years in the making. My hands were steady on the steering wheel. My breathing was even. The tears I had expected to shed never came. Instead, I felt a profound sense of peace, the kind that comes when you finally stop fighting a battle you were never going to win. The battle for their love, for their respect, had been lost long ago. The only battle left to win was for myself. When I got to my apartment, the silence that greeted me felt different. Usually, it was a silence that felt temporary, a holding pattern until the next family demand or manufactured crisis. Now, it felt like a sanctuary. It was mine. I dropped my keys in the bowl by the door, walked straight to my home office, and opened my laptop. The screen glowed to life, illuminating my face in the dim room. "I'll do something useful," I had told them, and I meant it. My fingers flew across the keyboard, driven by a muscle memory honed by years of managing their digital lives. The first cord to cut was the easiest. I logged into my account for the streaming bundle. The landing page showed the familiar logos: Netflix, Hulu, HBO Max, Disney+. My profile picture was a default smiley face. Theirs were customized avatars. My mom's was a flower. Tom S. was a cartoon superhero. It was a small thing, but it felt symbolic. Even here, they had made themselves at home in a space I paid for. My eyes scanned the account page. Billed to Jesse R. Visa *** 1234. Underneath that, a section, Manage Subscription. I clicked it without hesitation. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure you want to cancel? You'll lose access to thousands of shows and movies." I thought of them, sitting by the pool, laughing at my expense. I thought of my mom telling me to be useful. A small, bitter laugh escaped my lips. I clicked Confirm Cancellation. The screen refreshed. Your subscription has been canceled and will end immediately. The first cord was cut. A jolt, not of fear, but of exhilaration, shot through me. The second cord was the gas fund. A few years ago, my mom's old car was constantly breaking down, so I'd helped her get a more reliable used one. To make things easier, I'd taken out a shared gas station credit card, listing her and Tom as authorized users. I told myself it was for her doctor's appointments and grocery runs, but I saw the statements. I saw the late-night fill-ups for Tom's truck, the convenience store snacks, the energy drinks. It was a lifeline I provided with no questions asked. I logged into the credit card portal. There it was, a list of authorized users. Jesse R. primary, Carol R., Tom R. With 2 clicks, I selected their names and chose the option, Remove User. Another pop-up. This action is permanent and will deactivate their cards immediately. I clicked Confirm. The second cord was severed. The third and final cord was the most significant. The groceries. This had started when my mom had trouble getting to the store one winter, so I set up a weekly delivery service for her, linked to a separate credit card I kept just for that purpose. Over time, the weekly bill had ballooned. What started as basics, milk, bread, eggs, had morphed into gourmet ice cream, expensive cuts of meat, and bags of Tom's favorite chips. This morning, before the party, I'd received the notification. A charge for $385.67 for 1 week of groceries. I pulled up the credit card statement online. The charge was still listed as pending. I looked at the name of the grocery service, the one I had set up for them, the one they had taken for granted, the one that had just been used to stock a party where I was the main event in a comedy routine. My heart hammered against my ribs. This felt bigger. This felt final. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the back of the card. After navigating the automated menu, a cheerful voice answered. "Thank you for calling customer service. My name is Brenda. How can I help you?" I took a breath. "Hello, Brenda. I need to report a lost or stolen card and freeze my account." "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Of course, I can help you with that right away," she said. "Can I have your name and the card number?" I gave her the information. "Okay, Jesse," she said after a moment. "I see the account. I've placed an immediate freeze on it so no further charges can go through. Can you tell me the last purchase you authorized?" I looked at the pending charge on my laptop screen, the one for the party. "The last authorized charge was last week," I said, my voice even. "There is a pending charge from today for $385.67. That charge was not authorized by me." "I understand," Brenda said calmly. "We can dispute that for you. I've flagged it as unauthorized." "Thank you, Brenda," I said, a wave of relief so powerful it almost made me dizzy. That's all I needed. I hung up the phone and stared at my laptop screen. Cancelled, removed, frozen. In the span of 15 minutes, I had dismantled the entire financial support system I had painstakingly built for my family over the past 5 years. Every click had been a declaration of independence. It was done. I leaned back in my chair, the silence of my apartment wrapping around me like a blanket. I felt hollowed out, but in a good way. The space once filled with resentment and obligation was now just empty. It was a blank slate. It was mine to fill. The wallet was closed. The hours after cutting the cords were the strangest I'd experienced in years. My phone, usually buzzing with texts from the family group chat or reminders from my mom, was completely silent. The quiet in my apartment was absolute. It felt like the deep, peaceful stillness after a violent thunderstorm has finally passed. I had been living in the storm for so long, I had forgotten what the calm felt like. A part of me expected immediate fallout. I envisioned my mom seeing the cancellation email for the streaming services and calling me right away. I imagined Tom at a gas station, his card declined, furiously dialing my number. But the evening wore on and nothing happened. 5 p.m. turned to 6, then 7. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across my living room floor. The silence began to feel less like peace and more like suspense. For the first time that day, a sliver of doubt crept in. Had I overreacted? Was humiliating me in front of a dozen people really a crime worthy of this level of retaliation? The good daughter programming in my brain, installed and updated over 28 years, began to run its course. They're your family. They love you. They just have a funny way of showing it. I pushed myself off the office chair and walked into the kitchen, needing a distraction. I opened my fridge. It was sparsely populated, some yogurt, a carton of eggs, a bottle of hot sauce. I rarely cooked for myself anymore. Most of my food budget and energy went toward the massive weekly grocery order for my mother and brother. I'd eat leftovers from what I bought them or just grab takeout. On impulse, I opened a food delivery app on my phone. I scrolled past the cheap and easy options and found the listing for my favorite Thai restaurant, the one I always considered too expensive for a casual Tuesday. I ordered everything I wanted: the spicy green curry, the fresh spring rolls, the sweet mango sticky rice for dessert. I didn't look at the price. I just clicked order. It was a small act of rebellion, a way of redirecting resources back to myself. As I waited for my food, I sat on my own couch, a simple, comfortable sofa I'd bought for myself, in a color I liked. I logged into my Netflix account, the one I paid for separately for my own apartment. I scrolled through the shows, realizing I could watch whatever I wanted without someone else complaining about my choice. I put on a documentary that Tom would have called boring and my mom would have not understood. The food arrived, hot and fragrant. I ate it straight from the containers, savoring every bite. It tasted like freedom. With each spoonful of curry, the doubt receded, replaced by a strengthening resolve. My mind drifted back through a catalog of slights, a library of moments where I had been made to feel small. I remembered my 25th birthday. I'd wanted to go out for a nice dinner with just my mom and Tom. Instead, my mom insisted on a potluck at her house, so everyone could be included. It ended with me running around serving 24 relatives while Tom and his friends took over the stereo. At the end of the night, my mom handed me a bill for the paper plates and decorations. I remembered the time my car broke down. I called Tom to ask for a ride to work. He'd let out a huge, dramatic sigh. "Jess, my truck gets terrible mileage. Do you know how much gas that's gonna cost me?" he'd complained. I ended up taking an expensive cab, even though he was sitting at home playing video games. He was using the very gas I paid for as an excuse not to help me. These weren't just isolated incidents. They were a pattern. They were the foundation of our entire relationship. The pool party wasn't an anomaly, it was a symptom of a sickness that had been festering for years. They hadn't just taken my money, they had taken my voice. They had taken my standing in the family. My retaliation wasn't an overreaction. It was a long overdue correction. It was an act of survival. By the time I finished my documentary and cleaned up my dinner containers, it was nearly 9 p.m. The last of the sun had faded from the sky, and my apartment was dark except for the glow of a single lamp. My phone remained silent. A new thought occurred to me, more disturbing than the doubt. What if they didn't even notice? What if my grand gesture, my dramatic severing of ties, was met with complete indifference? What if their evening was proceeding as normal, and the only person in turmoil was me? The thought was terrifying. It would mean that my financial contributions, the very thing I felt had defined me, were so taken for granted that their absence wasn't even immediately felt. It would mean I truly was nothing to them. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, watching the clock on the screen tick from 8:59 to 9:00. The silence stretched on, thick and heavy. I had built the storm, and now I was sitting in its eye, waiting. And then, just as I was starting to believe the other shoe would never drop, my phone screen lit up the dark room. The screen read simply, "Mom." The phone buzzed against the wooden coffee table, a jarring, angry sound in the profound quiet of my apartment. For a long moment, I just stared at the screen. Mom. The name that once meant comfort and safety now sent a jolt of pure anxiety through my veins. My heart, which had been beating calmly just a second before, began to hammer against my ribs like a trapped bird. This was it, the moment of reckoning. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for the phone. My thumb hovered over the green, accept icon. Part of me wanted to silence it, to let it go to voicemail, to hide from the confrontation I had engineered. But I knew that would be a retreat, a sign of weakness. I had started this. I had to see it through. I took one last, deep breath and swiped to answer. "Hello," I said, my voice coming out steadier than I expected. "Jessie, thank goodness." It was my mom, Carol, but her voice wasn't apologetic or concerned about why I'd left the party. It was frantic, laced with an irritation that set my teeth on edge. "Something's wrong with the TV. The Netflix isn't working. It just keeps giving an error message. I tried restarting it and everything." I stayed silent, letting her words hang in the air. She wasn't asking if I was okay. She wasn't asking why I had disappeared from a family gathering without a word. She was calling for tech support. The first thing she thought of when my name came to mind was a broken streaming service. "Jessie, are you there?" she asked, her impatience growing. "And Tom just got back. He went to get gas for the mower for tomorrow, and his card was declined. Did you forget to pay the bill?" The accusation in her tone was unmistakable. The problem couldn't possibly be their behavior. It had to be my incompetence. I had failed in my duties as the family financial manager. Before I could even formulate a response, I heard shuffling on the other end of the line, and my brother's voice, angry and loud, boomed through the speaker. "Give me the phone," he said to my mom. "Jessie, what is going on? What did you do?" His voice was dripping with accusation. There was no hint of remorse for his comments at the pool. There was only the raw, unfiltered fury of a man who had been denied something he believed was his right. "I have no idea what you're talking about, Tom," I said, my voice cold and distant. It was a small lie, but a necessary one. I wanted to hear it from them. I wanted them to spell it out. "Don't play dumb with me," he spat. "Mom said Netflix is down, my gas card didn't work, and I just got an email from the grocery service saying our order for tomorrow has been canceled because of a payment issue. Are you trying to starve us? What is your problem?" What is my problem? The audacity of the question was breathtaking. He had publicly humiliated me, calling me a wallet in front of our entire family. My mother had dismissed my pain and told me to be useful. They hadn't called to see if I was hurt or upset. They had called because the supply chain of their comfortable life had been disrupted. Their concern wasn't for me, the person, the daughter, the sister. It was for the services I provided. They hadn't even connected my leaving the party with the consequences. To them, the two events were entirely unrelated. "My problem, Tom," I said slowly, enunciating each word, "is that I was at a party today where my own brother called me a wallet, and my own mother told me my only value was in grilling burgers." There was a moment of stunned silence on the other end. I had finally said it out loud. I had connected their actions to my reaction. It was my mom who spoke first, her voice now shifting from frantic to placating. "Oh, honey, you know Tom was just joking. He has a rough sense of humor, you know that. You're being too sensitive." "It was a joke, Jessie, a joke." Tom chimed in, his voice still edged with anger, not apology. "I can't believe you do all this over a stupid joke. It's crazy, you're punishing us." Punishing them? That's how they saw it. Not as a natural consequence of their disrespect, but as a cruel and unusual punishment I was inflicting upon them for no good reason. They were the victims. I, the one who had been quietly funding their lives while being treated like an appliance, was the villain. The final piece of my naivete crumbled to dust. They would never get it. They were incapable of seeing it from my perspective. Their world was built around their own needs, and I was just a tool to service those needs. Then the begging started, just as I knew it would. "Jessie, please," my mom's voice was wheedling now. "This is silly, we're family. Whatever is wrong, we can talk about it. Just turn everything back on for now and you can come over. I'll make you some tea. Please just come over so we can talk." Come over and talk. The classic olive branch offered only after the stick had failed. They didn't want to talk. They wanted me to come over and fix the Wi-Fi, reactivate the cards, and restore the status quo. They wanted to smooth things over just enough to get the money flowing again. I closed my eyes, picturing them in their living room, standing over the phone, united in their panic. For years, I had craved their unity, their attention. Now I had it, and I felt nothing but a great, aching sadness for the family we could have been. I listened to my mother's plea, the fake sweetness dripping through the phone. "Come over and talk." The words echoed in the quiet of my apartment. For years, that was all I wanted: to talk, to be heard, to have a real conversation where my feelings were considered valid. But this wasn't an invitation for a conversation. It was a summons. They were calling the wallet back to the head office for a reprimand. I let the silence stretch, forcing them to wait. I could hear my brother muttering impatiently in the background, something about how I was being dramatic. My mother shushed him. She was the diplomat now, trying to coax the ATM back online. In that silence, I felt a profound shift within myself. The anger was still there, a hot coal glowing in my stomach, but it was now banked by a new sense of calm. The fear of their disapproval, a fear that had dictated so many of my life choices, was gone. What was left to be afraid of? They had already shown me the worst of it. They had shown me that, in their eyes, I barely existed. There is a strange power in knowing you have nothing left to lose. I thought about all the things I could say. I could scream, I could cry, I see. I'd list every single grievance from the last 10 years, presenting them with a detailed invoice of my pain. But I knew it would be pointless. It would be like yelling at a brick wall. They weren't capable of hearing me because they weren't listening for my feelings. They were listening for a password, for the magic words that would unlock their accounts. So, I decided not to give them a lengthy explanation they would only twist and use against me. I decided not to give them the emotional drama they could later recount to relatives as evidence of my instability. I would give them something clean, something simple, something they couldn't argue with. I would give them the truth. I took a deep breath, picturing my mother's hopeful face and my brother's impatient one. "No," I said. The word was quiet, but it landed with the force of a slammed door. "What?" my mother asked, confused. "What do you mean no? Jessie, just come over, don't be difficult." "I mean no, I will not be coming over," I said, my voice gaining strength. "And no, I will not be turning anything back on." Tom snatched the phone back. His voice was incredulous. "You can't be serious. So what, we're just supposed to have no groceries, no gas, no nothing, because you got your feelings hurt?" "My feelings didn't just get hurt, Tom," I replied, my voice as cold as ice. "They were dismissed publicly by my own family. And you're right. You will have no groceries, no gas, and no nothing that is paid for by me. From now on, you are responsible for yourselves." "That's not fair," he yelled. "We can't afford all that. You can. You're supposed to help us, your family." "A family doesn't treat one of its own like a service provider," I shot back. "A family doesn't mock someone and then demand they be useful. You don't want a family, Tom. You want a sponsor. And I am officially resigning from the position." My mom got back on the line, her voice trembling now, on the verge of tears. The panic was setting in. "Jessie, please," she begged. "You can't do this to us, to your mother, to your brother." Her words, meant to guilt me, had the opposite effect. They solidified my resolve. She wasn't saying, "You can't do this to our relationship." She was saying, "You can't do this to us." The distinction was everything. This was my moment. This was the culmination of every ignored thank you, every dismissive comment, every time I had swallowed my own needs to accommodate theirs. This was for the $5,000 business loan. This was for the gray couch. This was for the wallet in flip-flops. I stood up and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights twinkling in the darkness. They were individual points of light, existing on their own, not fueling anyone else's bulb. I wanted to be like that. Without thinking twice, I replied. My voice was calm, clear, and utterly final. The wallet is closed for business, I said. When you want to talk to your daughter and your sister, you can call me back then. I didn't wait for a response. I didn't give them a chance to argue or beg or cry. I pressed the red end call icon on my phone screen. The line went dead. A profound silence filled my apartment. It was over. I had done it. A single tear, the one I had been holding back all day, finally escaped and rolled down my cheek. It wasn't a tear of sadness or anger. It was a tear of relief. The weight I had been carrying on my shoulders for a decade, the heavy, crushing burden of their expectations, was finally gone. I was free. The days that followed the phone call were a tempest of digital noise. My phone lit up with a relentless barrage of texts and calls. The first wave came from Tom. They were angry, typewritten demands, accusing me of cruelty and betrayal. When I didn't respond, the tone shifted to desperate pleas, promising he'd make it up to me if I just turned the gas card back on. I read them all, feeling a detached sense of pity, and then I blocked his number. The second wave came from my mother. Her texts were a masterclass in emotional manipulation. They started with guilt. I can't believe you would do this to your own mother after all I've done for you. Moved to feigned concern. I'm just so worried about you, honey. You're not acting like yourself. And ended with passive-aggressive digs. I guess Tom and I will just have to figure out how to eat this week. Don't worry about us. It was a performance I had seen my whole life. For the first time, I refused to buy a ticket. I blocked her number, too. The silence that followed was blissful. It was my own, earned and paid for by my own courage. For the first few days, I felt a phantom limb-like sensation, an instinct to check my phone for the next demand, the next crisis. But as the days turned into a week, the instinct faded, replaced by a novel feeling: peace. During that first week, I did something I hadn't done in years. I focused entirely on myself. I, too, the money I would have spent on their groceries and booked a session with a therapist. I took the mental energy I would have spent worrying about their bills and poured it into a new project at work, earning praise from my boss. I took the time I would have spent on a Sunday at their house and used it to reconnect with old friends. One afternoon, I had coffee with a college friend named Sarah. I told her everything that had happened. I expected her to be shocked, but she just nodded knowingly. "Jessie," she said, stirring her latte, "we all saw it. We saw how they treated you at graduation, at your birthday parties. We just didn't know how to say anything. We are so proud of you for finally standing up for yourself." Her words were a balm on a wound I didn't even know was still so raw. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't overreacted. My reality was validated. A week after the call, a tentative text came through from a number I didn't have blocked. My Aunt Patty, my mom's sister. She had been at the pool party. "Jessie," her text read, "I'm not going to pretend to know the whole story, but I saw what happened at the party and I heard what Tom said. It was wrong. Your mother should have stepped in. I just wanted you to know that not everyone in the family thinks you're the bad guy. I hope you're okay." That text meant more to me than she could ever know. It was a single lighthouse beam in a fog of family condemnation. It told me that the problem wasn't a family problem, it was their problem. I started a new budget, this time on a spreadsheet titled Jessie's Future. I created categories for travel, for hobbies, for savings, for a down payment on my own condo. Seeing the numbers, my numbers allocated for my dreams, was empowering. For so long, my income had felt like a resource to be managed for others. Now, it felt like a tool for building my own life. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my mother and brother. The resolution to this story isn't a tearful family reunion where they suddenly see the error of their ways. Life isn't a movie. The resolution is the quiet in my apartment. It's the therapy appointment on my calendar. It's the plane ticket to Spain I bought for a solo trip next month. The resolution wasn't about fixing them, it was about saving myself. I have left the door to a relationship with them cracked open, but the handle is now on my side. They know the price of admission. It isn't money, it's respect. It's an apology. It's seeing me, Jessie, as their daughter and their sister, not their emergency fund. Whether they can ever afford that price is up to them. But the wallet, as I told them, is closed for good. And for the first time in a very long time, I feel incredibly rich.